continue what we started last fall. We fixed up a portion on the east end of Earlington Parkway that we didn't think was going to survive the winter, but we're going to do the remaining portion of Earlington Parkway, and then you'll notice that we're doing several adjacent streets to Earlington Parkway within that neighborhood. Emerald Parkway, Innovation Drive to Perimeter Drive. This will be another portion of Emerald Parkway. We want to keep Emerald Parkway in good condition, certainly, and this is an effort to do that. Eiderman Road in Ballantrae, from Ballantrae Place to Shire Rings Road. That work will also include the intersections at Ballantrae Place and Warner Temple Road to actually replace those paver intersections and revitalize those intersections. So that'll be a portion of this work as well this year. Bradenton Avenue, Tuttle Crossing Boulevard to Park Center, another one of our areas to maintain, and then Dublin Road, Rings Road to France Road is a project that we actually deferred from last year, but we are going to do this year. As always with this program, we know it's a popular program, a lot of questions, a lot of interaction during the project. We will certainly always communicate with flyers, signs, our portable message boards or changeable message boards, certainly put updated information on our website, and then social media is another great opportunity for us to communicate with residents about what is taking place and what the schedule is with this program. And as always, we will have a Dublin inspector on site that's always glad to answer any questions and solve any problems that might arise during the project. So the next slide. Major project underway that we actually got under contract in February this year. That's University Boulevard Phase 2. We're very excited about this project and performing this project in association with the Wexter Medical Center under construction just north of Shire Rings Road, University Boulevard. The acquisition is entirely complete, so we have all the necessary right-of-way and easements that we need for the project. Utility relocation work is still underway. That is expected to be complete in July of this year. We're coordinating that work with our contractor, who is Miller Brothers Construction. The value of that contract is approximately $3.1 million. They began construction in April of this year, and then the completion date for the entire project, and there's the next slide will show the project in better detail, is January of 2023. So it includes 4 different roundabouts along the alignment of University Boulevard, Shire Rings Road, and also the improvement of the intersection at Avery and Shire Rings itself, which will be a signalized intersection. And that work was intended to take place next year in terms of that intersection improvement. But if you've been down along Shire Rings Road where this project is occurring, within probably the last month, the appearance of Shire Rings Road with the removal of the trees and the vegetation is starkly different than what it was prior to the project. But I assure you, and I say oftentimes, we have to have a little destruction while we have a little construction, so be patient. But this will be a great project when it's finished. It'll be a boulevarded roadway with bike and pedestrian facilities incorporated into the project. So we are certainly excited about this project and anxious and glad that it's underway. Next slide. Long-awaited project, one we've been asked about frequently in partnership with Union County Engineer. The Union County and Union County Engineer's Office is the State Route 161 Cosgray Road roundabout. After kind of a couple years of delay, we have all the necessary right-of-way. The acquisition has been complete. The vast majority of the utility relocations are complete, which included American Electric Power, Columbia Gas. There's some minor work yet to be finished by some telecommunication companies. We're not anticipating any delays with that. We just did open bids on this project, and we are going to get under construction here in June, and then, in May of this year, with hopefully wrapping it up in September. Major part of this project is the closure of Cosgray Road for a large part of the project from June to August of this year. There certainly will be a posted detour on Eiderman Road, but we did want to make folks aware of that is going to be a major component of this project. Next slide. Project that is going to start after the tournament, the replacement of the 2 bridges on Muirfield Drive just north of Brand Road over the North Fork Indian Run. bridges that were built in the early to mid 70s as part of Muirfield Village, and are now in need of replacement. That'll be complete. General Construction will be the contractor, $1.3 million contract. And again, construction starting in June and being completed in November. In terms of maintenance of traffic, Muirfield Drive will be maintained one lane in each direction. And what we're going to do is basically do a crossover and put northbound and southbound traffic on one bridge while the other's being replaced. And then when the first new bridge is complete, we'll switch traffic over and then go to the second bridge for replacement and do the same thing. But beware that there will be a lane reduction on Muirfield Drive. Next slide. Pedestrian tunnel maintenance. We continue to work through our pedestrian tunnel inventory, predominantly in Mirrorfield Village. Again, infrastructure that was built in the 70s. And our tunnel this year is going to be on Carnoustie Drive, just south of Glick Road. The photographs that you see are not that tunnel, but gives you an idea of what the work is going to consist of, which is going to be removal of the existing battered stone retaining walls, then extending the current concrete pipe that consists of the tunnel itself, and then installing new concrete head walls with a stone veneer. This will be another repeat contractor, Complete General Construction. They're doing actually quite a bit of work for us this summer, and that's a $450,000 contract construction from May through November of this year. So another project we're looking forward to keep our tunnels in good condition and good looking. Next slide. Shared use path maintenance, keeping our path system in good working order and good condition. That work will take place from June of this year through August. It's really just minor reconstruction, crack sealing, seal coating, some patch repair as needed. But again, this is a continual program annually. And the value of this work this year, the funding level is $335,000. Next slide. Parking lot maintenance program that we actually marry up with the shared use path maintenance. We actually bid these two projects together just to get better pricing. This year we're going to be at the Dublin Community Recreation Center, Indian Run Falls parking lot, Dari Fields, parking lots adjacent to the soccer facilities, both east, north, and south. The South Pool, both lots at the South Pool, Woods of Brighton Park lot. And this work consistently involves mill and overlay, crack seal, and some seal coating, and then certainly adding or putting back the striping or marking out the parking stalls and handicap spaces. Next slide. Other maintenance projects that are always popular, our sidewalk maintenance program at a funding level of $250,000 again this year, citywide at many locations. We expect to bid this work in May and June of this year, go to City Council in June for a bid acceptance, and then actually perform the construction in June and July as a start, and then be done in September. We really would like to be done before school starts, but it's just there are so many locations with this program. It's very difficult to get all this work performed, in advance of the start of school. So we get pretty close, but that final completion date will be after the start of school. And then annual guardrail maintenance, we're really just at two locations this year: Bristol Parkway, north of Brand Road. Basically the rail on the bridge itself, or the North Fork Indian Run, and then the Bridge Street Bridge over the Sciota River. Another one that we're going to fix up the parapet wall just on the west side of the roundabout. And this value of this work is around $190,000. Next slide. Sanitary sewer extension. This project's currently under design. We call it Area 1C, which may not mean much to folks, but it's actually Glen Cree Place, north of Summit View Road, west of Sawmill Road, residential neighborhood that currently has water service but does not have sanitary sewer service. Design has been underway and nearly complete. The estimate for this project just around $720,000. So we are expecting to bid this project and get under construction this year. And it also include some street work on Glen Creek Place itself through our street maintenance funds. Next slide. This gives you a little better idea of the area itself. So I know this is an engineered drawing, but you can see towards the bottom of the exhibit, Summit View Road, and then Sawmill Road on your right. And then you'll see kind of a leader point into Area 1C. So it not only provides sewer service to the adjacent residential properties along Glen Creek Place, but also to a larger tract of property to the east of Glen Creek Place on the north end, and then over to Sawmill Road. Next slide. Water main extensions. This is another part of our utility extension program, getting utilities to our unserved areas. Area 4A, which is actually along the east side of Riverside Drive, north of Bright Road. Well, actually, this portion of the work is going to extend from Emerald Parkway up past Bright Road and then a little further north. That would be a 12-inch water main extension. Ultimately ends at Hannah Hills Drive. And then we married this project up with a shared use path project, a new shared use path along the east side of Riverside Drive from Emerald Parkway up to 7410 Riverside Drive. This design is, for all practical purposes, complete. We've started acquisition and continue on easement acquisition for the path and the water main. And really the construction schedule is going to be dependent upon the completion of those acquisitions. But we're hoping to bid this project later this year. Next slide. And another water main project, Bright Road, 12-inch water main. It's about 600 feet of water main between Emerald Parkway and Sawmill Road. It stops just short of Sawmill Road. Again, design complete, acquisition ongoing, and again, once again, construction is going to be dependent upon that acquisition. Next slide. So those are our big projects for this year. One I wanted to mention, that's a carryover project from last year. We are going to do some bridge deck work on the bridge in the historic district over the Sciota River, again, just west of the roundabout at 161 Riverside Drive. So that work's going to be coming up here very soon. So I also want to make folks aware of that. And we do ask that through the construction season, just exercise some patience, recognize that we do have construction workers in harm's way out working in the roadway. To be on the lookout for them and make sure that we can be as safe as possible while they're completing their work, and they go home healthy and safe every evening to their families. So we do ask that you give consideration to them, and if you ever have any questions, my contact information is shown on the slide, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. So thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you, Paul. And as Paul mentioned, he will be taking questions. We'll be taking those at the end of the presentations. There's always so much going on, and I wanted to reiterate that we do put updates on our website and social media channels, especially Nextdoor. I hope you all use that platform. I generally post traffic updates I get from Paul and his team at least once a week to keep you informed. Keep a lookout for that. And for those of you who maybe joined us a little bit late, I wanted to let you know that this is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link and a survey after the fact in the next couple of days. So you didn't miss anything if you missed the first couple of minutes tonight. And with that, I would like to invite Scott Moncrief, the city horticulturist, to talk to us about yard maintenance and landscaping. Scott.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good evening. Happy Earth Day. Just to remind you, it's still spring, although we had the snow yesterday, but looks like most of the spring blooms survived, so that's a good thing. Bruce, can you, next slide, please? So I'm going to go over some general springtime tips that we're doing out in the parks right now and that you can do at home as well as your HOA shared green spaces. So one thing that we're working on is we're cutting back the perennials that may have been left up for the winter. A lot of people leave their perennials up for winter to provide some interest. Now is a good time to cut those back. That's going to include the ornamental grasses as well. It's also a good time to remove any debris in your beds, the leftover leaves and twigs and debris. Of course, all that material can be bagged or bundled and put out for the landscape waste to pick up on Monday mornings. Right now, although I have on here the pull the emerging weeds, we did have an early warm up this year, and so the weeds are pretty much almost completely emerged at this point, but now's a good time to pull all the weeds out of the beds and get ready for planting in the summer. We're doing a lot of shrub pruning as well, but just to remind you that avoid pruning the shrubs that are going to flower in the spring. I have Forsythia as an example. Those have already bloomed, but also your lilacs haven't quite bloomed yet, so you don't want to prune those back or else you're going to lose those blooms. Also the viburnums. Next slide, please. So many people like to have a crisp edge on your beds between the grass and the mulch lines. Now's a good time to do that. I just wanted to point out that please avoid around the trees, especially most of the tree roots are in the top 6-8 inches of the soil. So you don't want to edge too deeply around those trees and cut any of the roots that are right at the surface. Mulching as well is very popular to do in the spring right now. 2 to 4 inches is as much as you need to put on, and avoid the volcano mulch rings like is shown in the picture on the slide. It is pretty common to see, and we try to avoid that for the health of the tree. Fertilizing the lawns and the landscapes, just remember that more isn't better. You want to stick to the rates that are on the fertilizer bags. You also want to blow off any of that fertilizer that's on the solid surfaces so it doesn't wash into the waterways. And then we do have our horticulture website there. We have several videos on our website that gives additional tips for maintaining your landscape. So visit that site and check out those videos if you get a chance. Next slide, please. So we're at the tail end of our Earth Month celebration in April. Earth Day is one of the highlights of that Earth Month celebration. We do have a poster contest that kids can participate on. Information is on the city's website for that. On April 24th, we have a drug take back day at the Justice Center. And on May 8th, there's a hazardous household waste collection. Also, you may want to check out on the city's website, there's a 4-part video series for Earth Month with talking about water quality, a native plant giveaway that horticulture department is doing on Saturday. We had 250 slots available and those quickly filled up. So we're giving away all the plants that we had for that program. There's also a video on composting and our Arbor Day celebration. And the website is there if you want to check it out for all of the Earth Month activities that went on this month. Next slide. So this is an important thing to communicate. We've had Go Dublin for a little while now, and that's the best way for folks to reach out to the city for services that you're requesting. So if you can get this from the city's website and create a Go Dublin account, and you can submit a service request that comes to us here at the city. There's multiple things that you can request. Here's a couple examples are to report litter, report landscaping needs. There's several different topics that you can select to request services. Like I said, you can go onto the city's website to download the app and get more information on it. I did want to point out that Go Dublin is intended for issues on city-owned property. Any issues on private property, especially with a code enforcement violation, please contact our code enforcement directly for those. And the number is there, 614-410-4600. I believe that is the last slide. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for mentioning the Go Dublin app. If you guys could take away one thing tonight, that really is the biggest point that I can express is to use the Go Dublin app, and you can access that on the website or through the App Store to request any number of services. We have people reaching out to us in the city all the time through social media, email, phone calls, but honestly, the fastest and most effective way is to use that app. So please use that. Thanks, Scott. And now I would like to introduce Lieutenant Greg Latanzi with the Dublin Police Department.
Thanks, Lindsay. Tonight, I just want to give a brief overview of public safety in 2020, what to expect in 2021, and also share some tips for you to share with your constituents in regards to helping reduce some of the more common property crimes that you may see in the city of Dublin, and the opportunity that you can play in helping the police department reduce opportunity for criminal activity within the city. So with that in mind, I just want to share our mission. Our mission is really what drives us and drives our goal setting each year. So Dublin Police Department employees are committed to protecting life, liberty, and property. We'll provide the highest level of service and work in partnership with our community to ensure public safety by focusing on the following core principles: vigilant, ethical, and impartial enforcement of law, critical incident preparedness and response, crime prevention, reduction, and deterrence, and improvement of public safety. Just to share our 2021 goals with you that our officers and staff will remain focused on: critical incident preparedness and response, those low frequency incidents that we hope never happen, but we need to be prepared for, that definitely have a significant impact if they do happen in the city, as well as preparedness for special events such as the Memorial Tournament that we have coming up in June. Theft reduction and throughout the city, overall traffic safety, and effectively addressing issues of significant community concern, and both a proactive and responsive measures to meet the needs of the community. Next slide, please. One of the more frequent offenses that we see in the city are theft offenses, predominantly theft from vehicle crimes that occur in the city. And we want to share our Don't Lose It campaign, and you likely have seen this in the past, in regard to some prevention methods that you and other folks in your neighborhoods can help by doing and reducing the opportunity for these offenses to occur. So please share with your friends and neighbors to hide their valuables, lock their vehicles, take any valuables that you may have in your vehicles either inside with you, or lock them in a trunk, or put them in a place where it is not observable from the outside of the vehicle. And also remember to take your car keys with you when you exit the vehicle. In 2020, we saw an unusually higher number of theft from vehicles in the city of Dublin, and largely those were predominantly vehicles that were left both unlocked in residents' driveways, and that also had the key fob in that vehicle. So it was very easy if someone was out roaming a neighborhood, if they were looking inside of cars, to eventually take that car. So those tips can definitely help reduce that number in 2021, and any support that we can get from the community is extremely important. In 2020, we saw reductions in overall theft offenses, specifically theft from vehicle offenses, burglaries, and breaking and entering offenses, and crashes were also down. While that sounds very good, I do want to be transparent in COVID having an effect on crime rates with the reduced amount of folks that were out and about and working, most likely had impact on those numbers. So I felt it was important for me to share our 5-year trends in regards to theft and burglaries and B&Es. And as you can see on those graphs on the right-hand portion of those slides, those have decreased over the last 5 years as time has gone on. So we hope to continue that downward trend in crime because, again, no amount of crime is acceptable for us. While we realize it may happen over time, our goal is to continue to reduce any offenses that occur here in the city. Next slide, please. Furthermore, I wanted to share some of our community outreach and engagement efforts, both in 2020 and ongoing in 2021. 2020 was a unique year for law enforcement and led to a very great opportunity for the department to establish a Chiefs Advisory Committee. And that advisory committee focuses on equitable policing practices. They meet monthly. That is why I'm with you tonight, because the chief is actually in a advisory committee meeting as we speak, and they focus again on best practices in public safety and procedurally just policing. And it also gives us an opportunity to share through that group, as well as the public, with our policies, practices, and some of our training efforts to continue and to continued improvement at the police department. Furthermore, we've got an upcoming Citizens Police Academy. The applications for that are due on May the 3rd, and you can apply on the city's website if you have interest or want to share that information. It is a 12-week program that allows Dublin residents to get a much more in-depth understanding of the police department, how we do things, why we do certain things, and also to get to know our staff. I would encourage anybody who has not done that to consider that if you want more information about the police department. Next slide. Some continued outreach and engagement efforts that we have started here in 2021 is our partnership with Starfish Academy and Assignment. So we have began a program of reading books to children at Dublin City Schools, the Books and Badges program. Additionally, on May 1st, we are hosting a bike drive for underprivileged and children in need. So that will be from 10 a.m. to noon at the Dublin Justice Center, where we would be accepting new or lightly used children's bikes for us to donate to children that need bikes. Furthermore, this Saturday, and as was mentioned in the previous presentation, we are conducting a drug take-back here at the Justice Center. So if you have old prescription medication that you want to get out of your house, we would definitely recommend you do that. And you can do that from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Justice Center, again, this Saturday, April the 24th. Next slide. And lastly, I just want to cover some of our planning for 2021 as we anticipate, when the weather breaks, increased activity in historic Dublin and Bridge Park. 2020 gave us an opportunity to analyze our districts that we assign officers in when they are out on patrol. Traditionally, we have only had 5 districts that we've broken the city up into that we assign officers to for their daily assignment. We examine those districts and recognize the impact that that Bridge Park and the historic Dublin area have had on the increased amount of residents that are traversing those areas. So we felt that it was imperative that we add a 6th district, as you can see the outline here, that really covers the entire area of what will be known as the trial area for the DORA that will likely happen over the summer. So that will be a designated officer to that district 24 hours a day. That doesn't mean that there may not be more officers than that in that district, but there would be one assigned to that area to increase visibility and patrols in that area of the city. Additionally, we've added 8 new bike officers to our bike unit, and have 10 certified drone pilots to help us increase safety efforts in that area and provide a great amount of visibility to those folks that are enjoying that door area. Next slide. And lastly, I wanted to share my contact information, but in closing, I wanted to leave you with this. The police department is committed to protecting life, liberty, and property. Our mission drives everything that we do. However, we can't accomplish our mission of keeping Dublin safe without the partnership with the community. As you can see in the nightly news, the profession of policing is in the eye of the public, and it should be. We're public servants. I assure you that the profession of policing is both noble and honorable. This is not said lightly or without acknowledgement that some police officers around the country have tarnished the badge and the oath that we take. It's our responsibility to rebuild any trust that has been lost due to the actions of a few. The men and women of the Dublin Police Department are some of the best law enforcement professionals in the country who strive daily to provide the highest level of public safety to this community. I encourage any of you or your constituents within your HOAs who have questions about the Dublin Police Department, about our policies, our practices, to please reach out. Reach out to myself or any other member of our command staff. We would be happy to share any information about our police department that you wish to know, because this police department is yours. I thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out to me directly with any comments, concerns, or questions you have about this police department. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much for that, Lieutenant Latanzi, and thank you and the department for all you do all year round. And on that note, I have to highly recommend the Citizens Police Academy that he mentioned. I had the opportunity to do that back in 2015, and I have to say it was a completely worthwhile, informative, and fun experience. So definitely worth the time. As he said, the applications are active on our website right now. Deadline to apply is 5 p.m. this Monday, May 3rd. I guess that's 2 Mondays from now. So Monday, May 3rd. Give it some serious thought and learn more about the police department and the city and just the profession of policing. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Megan O'Callahan, our Deputy City Manager, Chief Finance and Development Officer, with an update on some of those current city initiatives, including the DORA that Lieutenant Latanzi had mentioned earlier. So Megan.
Good evening, everyone. I have updates that I will run through briefly on 3 different topics, and they're 3 very different topics this evening. Next slide. The first topic Lieutenant Latanzi mentioned is the downtown Dublin DORA, the designated outdoor refreshment area, and that's more commonly referred to as a DORA. Many of you have likely heard about DORAs, and maybe you've even visited a DORA in one of the other communities that have had those. For those of you that aren't familiar with a DORA, I'll take a little bit of time to talk a little bit about what it is. It's an area that's established in a retail or a business area in which patrons are allowed to buy an alcoholic beverage from an approved liquor permitted establishment, and then they can take that alcoholic beverage around the DORA area within the specified boundaries. So DORAs have been created by some communities as a tool or an amenity to enhance the outdoor dining and entertainment experience. And also they add to the vibrancy of downtown area. So we're looking at creating and piloting 2 DORAs in Dublin, one in the historic district and one in Bridge Park. We have 2 separate DORAs because they will not be linked by the Dublin Link and Riverside Crossing Park. So those 2 amenities will not be included in the DORA boundaries. Next slide. For a little bit of background on the community conversation about the DORA, last July we conducted a community-wide survey and we had 85% of respondents expressing support for a DORA. This input was very, very helpful as council considered the idea of creating a DORA, and we had additional community conversation. We also held a public meeting, next slide. We also held a public meeting on March 3rd, and the vast majority of those who participated in that meeting also expressed approval for a DORA. Next slide, please. So what's next? Council will consider a resolution this coming Monday, April 26th at the City Council meeting. And the resolution will be for council to approve and create the DORAs in Dublin. Providing that council votes to move forward with the DORAs, the next step is for the state to issue permits to all participating establishments in the area that are interested in participating. And we're told that that process, or that approval process, will take about 3 weeks. It could take 2 to 3 weeks. So we're working towards launching the DORA. At this point, it'll be in mid to late May, and the exact date of that is to be determined, and that's based on hearing back from the state with those permits. So again, this is going to be a pilot initiative, and council will review the success of the initiative or the pilot effort in August sometime. So the proposed hours for the DORA during the pilot are Thursday, Friday, and Saturday between 5 and 10, as well as permitted events could request to have the DORA extended during the event. So the next topic I'd like to provide a brief update on is the 2035 framework planning effort that's underway. So as part of City Council's 2020 goal setting, Council asked staff to develop a framework for 2035. The framework would include a visionary set of big ideas or unique actions such as projects, policies, or programs, and that will have a transformative impact for the city over the next 15 years. Dublin's always been a forward-thinking community, and the 2035 framework is intended to continue to push our thinking to the next great things that will define our community. The 2035 framework will be used to guide the city's investment and policy decisions moving forward, such as the community plan and CIP projects. Next slide, please. We've laid out a timeline for this initiative with some of the milestones, and those are laid out on the screen for you. In late 2020 and early 2021, City Council held 2 work sessions to begin the work of the 2035 framework, and this helped define the beginning steps of the framework and divided the work into 4 theme areas, including quality of life, land use, economics, and infrastructure. Those will be addressed by the council committees. Each committee will work through a series of 3 milestones, and they have started milestone 1, which focuses on brainstorming and developing the initial big ideas. Milestone 2 will include further idea development along with public and expert engagement. And milestone 3 will include refinement and prioritization of the big ideas generated throughout the process, and ultimately adoption of the 2035 framework. The goal is to complete the framework for 2035 by the end of the year. And the last topic I want to spend a little time talking about, with some people working from home and with it being springtime, we're seeing more home improvement projects. So we wanted to take this opportunity to provide information that will help homeowners prepare for those projects. So I'm going to give a very brief overview of everyone's favorite topics of city code and private deed restrictions and how they might impact the improvements that you and your neighbors will be planning to your properties. So up on the screen, we've put together a basic side-by-side overview of the purpose, compliance, and enforcement aspects of city code and deed restrictions. Starting with city code, which is intended to protect against health, safety, welfare of the public. These requirements in city code are administered and enforced by the city. Deed restrictions, on the other hand, can be more restrictive than zoning regulations, and they include standards that are administered and enforced by the individual property owners and the HOAs. Next slide, please. So education and awareness and understanding of the differences between these two is key. So we ask that you please spend some time, encourage all your neighbors to spend time getting to know your deed restrictions. I know that sounds like fun, but it is important. Deed restrictions are included. You can find those in all closing documents upon the sale of a property, and they're also recorded with the local county's recorder's offices. So for Dublin, that can be Franklin County, Delaware County, or Union County, depending on the location of the property in question. With regard to city code and zoning restrictions, your city planning office and staff is here to answer any questions you may have, and they're able to help you navigate your projects through the process. So please feel free to reach out and ask any questions you may have and seek assistance from our staff. We encourage residents to contact both the city and the HOA before starting construction projects. We want to make sure that you start out your project on the right track so that they'll be compliant, so that the process goes smoothly and there won't be any issues down the road. So that's all I have this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. And Megan will be sticking around for Q&A, which will be coming up very shortly. Just letting everyone know we are right on time with the agenda and right on time to get to our Director of Parks and Recreation, Matt Ehrman, for Parks and Recreation project updates. Matt.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate being with you this evening. Got a few updates for you, some of which are projects, some of which are event planning and operations and so forth, as we've experienced a year's worth of pandemic and things that we've learned. So I'll go through a couple of key components of that with you this evening. First off, just starting off with Riverside Crossing Park. If you haven't been down to see the latest and greatest of the construction, particularly on the east side, the construction is on track. It is working forward. The upper plaza is very close to completion. It will include the seating, the tables, restroom facilities, and there is an outdoor enclosed gas fireplace. Certainly maybe not be used during the summer, but during some of the colder months. And then the next steps, we're going to be looking towards the lower plaza. As you can see in the picture there on the bottom, a lot of the work has already begun and is well underway. So we're hoping to get both of these open this year. The upper plaza will open first as soon as we can get the construction out of the way, and then the lower plaza later this fall. So looking forward to both of those projects. Next slide, please, Bruce. As you all are aware, the North Pool, the original Dublin outdoor pool, is being renovated. We do have season passes that will be for sale this year for both pools on a fairly limited basis in order for us to balance the usage and be able to maintain the capacity levels that we are going to endure this year due to the pandemic. The project at the North Pool is currently on track to be completed for Memorial Day weekend opening. That is pending any, and hopefully no delays in the construction. But right now we are on schedule. Some of the next steps that we're working on here are listed there. If you haven't been by the pool lately, take a quick trip over and take a look through the fence. There's a lot going on with the water slide assembly and pouring the pool decks, and there will be a lot of things that are going to be coming to completion here fairly quickly from this point. Next slide, please. For those of you who aren't pickleball enthusiasts, there are quite a few pickleball enthusiasts here in Dublin. We have constructed new courts that are located near the Justice Center out by the skate park. There are 8 new courts. The fencing is currently in place, and we've got most of the infrastructure there. We're just waiting for weather to cooperate at this point. We need temperatures to be 50 degrees or greater consistently for curing purposes for the striping and the final surface for that facility. Next slide, please. I want to make sure that everybody knows that the Recreation Center is open for business. There are currently membership opportunities for you to take advantage of with several different types of perks that you can get for a new membership. I want everybody to know that we are open and we are safe. Safety is our top priority. We do follow all of the state, local, and health department guidelines. If you would like to seek more information, have questions or concerns, certainly call the Recreation Center or schedule a time when you can go by, and we'd be happy to walk you through a tour of the facility to see how we're operating. Next slide, please. Everybody is on the edge of their seat for our community events this year. We are working towards a better operation than we had last year, but we are still under restrictions. Unfortunately, the Memorial Day ceremony itself will be a virtual experience and not held in person. We are working on a series of videos that will be posted on the city's website and through our social media channels. Independence Day, we are looking to have fireworks this year. We are anticipating smaller concert venues and spreading it out a little bit, not just in the Kaufman Park Stadium. We are working on parade details. We don't know if that's going to be a reverse parade similar to what we had at St. Patrick's Day at Darry Fields, or neighborhood parades. It doesn't look like we'll be able to do a traditional parade downtown, but we're still looking at those options, and more details on that to come. And then for the Irish Festival, we're thinking of we are planning for Dublin Irish Days that will take place in Kaufman Park and certainly in downtown Dublin. Rather than having 100,000 plus people in Kaufman Park for a 3-day event, we're going to spread that out as well. And we will be posting several details of that in days to come. With that, I think that concludes this PowerPoint, and we'll turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Matt. That's information everyone's been asking about and hoping to do some great events this year. So we are going to start off with the questions that were submitted before the meeting. Many of you submitted those via email. I will read those and we will hear a response from one of our staff members. If you have a question that you did not submit beforehand, please use the raise your hand button available through WebEx. Just click on the hand in the bottom left of your screen. You may need to click on participants if you don't see that. And then you should get the hand and then raise it and we will call on you. And once we do that, you will be unmuted and we will be able to hear you and you can ask your own questions. We do have a variety of staff here tonight, including city leadership, to answer your questions. We are also lucky enough to be joined by several Dublin City Council members. And I would like to invite Mayor Ambrose Grooms back to introduce those fellow council members.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate all of that good information, staff, and putting those presentations together. Hopefully everyone finds those extremely helpful. I did want to take a moment and introduce my fellow council members that are here with me this evening. If they care to turn their cameras on, they certainly are welcome to do that. There's lovely Jane Fox, and there is Kathy DeRosa, Christina Aludo there. Hello, Christine. And certainly Andy Keeler. So thanks. And we are all here present, ready if you have any questions that would be appropriate for us to address too. So I trust we will get to everything, all of the questions this evening, and we will stand at the ready to do anything we can to facilitate. So thanks again, staff, for the presentation. And thanks, Lindsay. Let's go ahead and move on to the questions.
Thank you so very much, Mayor, and thank you all for being here. Okay, our first question is for Megan, and the question is, how is our office occupancy rate these days, and what is the 3 or 6 month trend? Megan.
Good question. So our latest data that we have from the 4th quarter of 2020 that we analyzed shows that our office vacancy rate rose slightly from 12.43% to 13.47%. And we believe that's a result of slowed leasing activity due to COVID and some amount of small office closures. There was also a small amount of newly completed non-pre-leased office space at Bridge Park that came online that contributed to nudging up that vacancy. It's important to mention that while our office vacancy rate is an important metric that we monitor closely, another key metric is our income tax revenues. And despite the COVID impacts on the larger economy, income tax withholdings revenues in Dublin actually increased. We monitor the economic activity on a monthly basis to ensure that we understand the significant or the sustained economic impacts of the pandemic on a local economy. So we're on it. We did see, as I mentioned, a slight increase prior to that. It had been going down. So we'll continue to monitor and see what the long-term impacts might be on COVID.
Thank you so very much for that, Megan. And sticking with a similar topic, someone asks, what development irons are in the fire? And for that, I will have to turn it over to none other than City Manager Dana McDaniel. Dana.
Thanks, Lindsay, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our HOA meeting, spring meeting. It's great to have you all. First, before I do that, I want to acknowledge and thank our Dublin City Council for their leadership and the great work that they've done through the pandemic this last year, the economic crisis that we faced, and all that's come with that. I also want to thank our staff for all the great work that they have done and for the great work here this evening. I would encourage you all to take a look at, if you haven't, our State of the City address that we released back in March, and I think that covers a lot of this question. This is a big question, by the way. I'll try to cover some, excuse me, some highlights, and so bear with me while I try to do that, because actually I'm kind of proud of it. And I tell you what, as I sit and listen to the presentations that we went through here this evening, I'm pretty proud of our staff, and I'm proud of all of the great things that we're doing. And again, I thank City Council for their leadership and the resourcing that they've done to enable us to make all that happen. So let me kind of start from the east side of the city over by Sawmill Road, and I'll work my way west so that there's somewhat of an organization to this. If you haven't been over there and seen the new rehab hospital that's finished just north of the Kroger on Sawmill Road, you need to go drive over there and take a drive by that. It's a really cool facility. I think we're really fortunate to have that in our community. I had a chance to tour that at the end of the last year, and it is really outstanding, and what a great addition to our community. There's new development on Bridge Street coming on along State Route 161, Bridge Street, just west of Sawmill Road. If you're familiar with the old Stone Ridge medical offices there, just to the south, just to the west of that, there'll be some new development occurring there. Council recently approved that. There's a new bank on Sawmill Road there at Bridge Park Avenue. I believe that's a Chase Bank, and they're doing some really cool things there. The rehab of the Fifth Third building at Sawmill and 161. I don't know if you're all familiar with that building that's been there probably since the late 80s, early 90s. That's a big office building with a Fifth Third bank branch inside it. They've done a great job of rehabbing that building and rehabbing the landscaping. It just really looks fresh and new. Go by and take a look at that. I also want to tip my hat to the Stavroff Company, who's done really a great job with the old Dublin Village Center over there. I was driving that about a week ago and just kind of drove through the parking lots and everything. If you haven't done that lately, go take a look. They've done a really nice job of cleaning up the landscaping, cleaning up the parking lots, putting new roofing on, new facade work, new signage, new wayfinding signage, and I really want to recognize them for their investment and work over there. So it really, it's made a great improvement over there, and I want to thank them for that. Bridge Park continues to grow and develop. I think you all know that the north end phase was completed where the North Market is, and hopefully you've got over there and got a chance to enjoy that. New condos, apartments, a new restaurant announcement over there, and Haggerty Insurance will be occupying the office building that anchors the north end of that development. The next phase, across from the new hotel, the Spring Hill Suites, which is opening up, will hopefully begin this summer if we can get construction prices under control and make it a more favorable environment for them to start to build out. Coming across the river, and I won't recap what Matt Ehrman briefed you on with the new Riverside Crossing Park, but obviously that's really exciting there and a great tie-in to all this development. But over on the west side of the river in the North High Street area, the new brewery going in over there at the very north end, where That has been vacant for a little while. That's going to be a really exciting venue there. Council Development Committee, by the way, is reviewing the recommendations of the Historic District Task Force. If you haven't seen those, I really want to applaud that task force for powering through the pandemic and coming up with some great recommendations for the historic district. And our council's Community Development Committee is reviewing those and trying to set conditions and recommendations back to City Council about how to make some of those recommendations come to life. So that's pretty exciting. Council's, well, the Dublin Corporate Area Plan, let me just refer to that as our Legacy Office Park refresh. That's, and all those Legacy Office Parks are really along the France Road corridor, Metro Center, Blazer Parkway, all of that area. A lot of thought and effort's been put into that. Continue to do some rezoning in that area, some potential redevelopment with some mixed use opportunities is being discussed in and around Metro Center and some of that adjacent area. So it's pretty exciting to have those discussions. Nothing that I can really get into great detail yet, very much in the preliminary stages. If you're not familiar with them, Quantum Health has taken on 2 of the main buildings of the former Ashland campus. And they have nearly 2,000 employees there with the intention of continuing to grow significantly. I had a great meeting with them just in this last week, and it was really exciting to hear about their growth plans. And it's great to see a lot of new energy into the Ashland, what was the Ashland campus, and with INEOS and others being located on that campus as well. The Corners, if you're familiar with that, right across the street to the north of the Field of Corn, we'll be developing in partnership with Daimler. There'll be a new park there. There will be some retail on that corner as well as some other mixed use. So it's an exciting project. Not sure if they've started moving dirt there yet. I meant to drive by there this evening and see, but that's supposed to start, if it hasn't already, literally at any time. As you move further west, the OSU Medical, the Ohio State University Wexner Ambulatory Care Center is under construction, as Paul alluded to in his update, as well as University Boulevard. That's really setting some great conditions to build on that industry cluster that we're so proud of in the healthcare industry. And with the city having previously invested in quite a bit of land in that immediate vicinity, there is a lot of interest in similar and supportive potential development to that development that could occur. So we are in some early conversations about that, but a lot of energy around that new development and the presence of the OSU Medical Center there. The Ohio Health Cancer Treatment Facility is nearing completion on Perimeter Drive. That's very easily seen from Perimeter Drive to the north side of Perimeter Drive, generally to the back of Dublin Methodist Hospital. So a great project there, a great service to our residents here close by, and really appreciate Ohio Health's investment on that. A different developer desires to advance all single-family homes on the Gordon property at the corner of Highland Croy and Post Road. That developer, I believe, tends to stay generally in the same kind of context as the previous developer was proposing, but unfortunately did not carry through with that. If you're familiar with that project, it's really a single-family home development. You're probably going to forego the adult care living facility there and include more single-family homes in their proposal. Right now, there's a lot of discussion about the density, lot sizes, architecture, and so forth, as you would expect in a project like that at this stage. But I think generally you're going to see a improved single-family housing opportunity than was previously proposed. And they're at the stage right now of going back and approaching neighbors and having a discussion with the neighborhoods there adjacent to the Gordon property on that. So for those of you who live in that immediate area, if you haven't had that meeting already, you'll be having that pretty soon, and then we'll see how that advances through the process. The reconstruction of the Post Road State Route 161 interchange with US 33, that remains on track for a start in 2022. The staff has had discussion with the development group relative to the property adjacent to the OU, Ohio University campus, between the campus and Ehrman Road and US 33. That has long been projected to be a mixed use development there, not at the density that you would expect or that you've seen at Bridge Park, but something of mixed use there. We're in very early stages of discussion. Hopefully more to come out on that. A couple more things here. Council members and staff remain very engaged in the US 33 corridor as we go to the west and the north relative to our partners with Marysville, Union County, Jerome Township, and the like, and other public agencies and private sector partners about the development of the US 33 corridor, the implications of that, as well as the opportunities for a great economic development to include our autonomous and connected vehicle technology and so forth that we're deploying out there. Now, we've labeled that the new beta district, much as you may come to know or know places like the Research Triangle Park or Silicon Valley. We think we're going to be the next one of those in the 33 corridor, and we've labeled it the beta district, so you'll hear more about that. The city's economic outlook continues to be very positive. Please take a look at that State of the City presentation, and you'll learn more about that. And last, I just want to emphasize that the city continues to think very strategically. We've taken great pride in over our history of being very forward-looking, very planning focused. I know Megan touched on that a little bit with the 2035 framework plan, but we're also very aggressive and proactive in participating in regional planning studies, such as the river corridor studies that are going on, some transportation mobility corridor studies that are going on, regional housing study that has taken place. And so very proud to have been a part of that, and we'll continue to do so to plan for Dublin's future. So with that, I think that'll be enough for that question. And sorry for the long answer, but I hope that answers it.
So just a few irons in the fire there, Dana. Thank you so much for that very thorough response. I really appreciate that. And I have a couple of questions for Paul Hammersmith. I'm going to give you two back-to-back questions if you don't mind. The first one is regarding AEP and whether or not they will be repairing the sidewalks and walking paths damaged during the tower replacement project near Emerald Fields Park.
Yeah, and I think the question is referring to what they call the AEP, referred to as their Bethel Sawmill transmission line rebuild project, which actually just recently kind of had the final portion done, which was the restoration work. I think they actually finished last week. We have a right-of-way permit with them because they needed our approval to close the paths. So we're going to give those a final inspection now that their work is complete, because I wanted the opportunity to have all the equipment off of those paths and sidewalks and then see what condition they're in. And then we will follow up with AEP, but they recognize the fact that they're responsible for any damage that they are, did during the execution of the project. So that is definitely on our radar to look into.
Thanks, Paul. And the next question, if the shared use path along Riverside Drive will be extended to 7410 Riverside, does that mean it will connect to the section of the shared use path that runs south from Hard Road? If so, does that mean that one will be able to walk from Kosciuszko Park all the way to Bridge Street? When, if ever, will that path be extended from Tonti to Wyandotte Woods?
Man, multiple questions in one question. So I'll start with the first, and the answer is yes. This first section of the Riverside Drive path will connect to the existing path that extends south of Hard Road adjacent to Riverside Woods. So when this section 1 path is complete, yes, you'll be able to basically from Emerald Parkway, Bridge Park area, be able to walk north all the way to Hard Road, make that connection, and then even further up to Tonti Drive. From Tonti Drive up to Wyandotte Woods, that is what we call Section 2. In last year's adopted CIP, it is not yet funded, or funding is not yet programmed. We are in the process of updating our 5-year CIP at the staff level and providing that information. So it's yet to be determined whether the funding will advance for that next section. We know there's a desire to have that connection and make that connectivity all the way to Wyandotte Woods. So stay tuned. We know that's of interest to folks in that area, but we don't know yet whether that's going to make it within the next 5-year programming cycle.
Thanks, Paul. Don't go far. I know I'll have more questions for you coming up.
Gladly. I'll be right here.
Thank you. But the next question is for Scott. The city planted trees are not only causing issues for our sidewalks, but also some homes' foundations. Neighbors want to know how to go about getting these trees removed.
So as I spoke in my presentation, the best way to ask us about city services would be through the Go Dublin app. There are 2 work units that take care of city-owned trees. The forestry work unit, which is led by Brian Goodall, our city forester, they take care of the street trees between the sidewalks and the streets. And then the horticulture group takes care of the park trees. So instead of figuring out whose tree it is, if you submit a Go Dublin request, then we can sort that out and get that service taken care of. If you don't want to do the Go Dublin app, you can also call our Parks line at 614-410-4700. And that call can be directed to whoever is responsible for that particular tree.
Thanks so much, Scott. And next, I'll have Matt Ehrman. I'll have 2 questions back to back for you as well. A question about the timing on changes to the park in Killalea.
As to changes to the park in Killalea, I would need more detailed information for that question. So I'd be happy to follow up with the individual. I do know that the playground system that is in that park is on our radar for replacement within the next couple of years. For those that have been to all of our playgrounds, we have 43 different playgrounds throughout the city that are inspected on a weekly basis, and they are evaluated based on their condition, the safety factors, and certainly the warranty of all of the equipment. So that particular playground, as I recall, is probably within a 2 or 3 year replacement. But if they want more information about the park itself, certainly feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Matt. And the next question is, when will the park shelters be available for booking?
Actually, the park shelters are available for booking on a very limited basis. We will accommodate up to 10 people for the picnic shelters. So you can contact our reservation line to get more information on that, or visit the city's website to make that reservation.
Thank you very much, Matt. Next question is for Megan, and what is the current status of the Sawmill Road annexation proposal that was tabled last year?
Okay, so there had been some discussion about a boundary adjustment along Sawmill Road, and that boundary adjustment was intended to clarify maintenance responsibility and police jurisdiction within the roadway between Columbus and Dublin. And that was discussed at a council meeting. There were some concerns raised by residents in the area, in that immediate area, about unintended consequences, and there were some questions raised about that boundary adjustment. And ultimately, the issue was tabled at the time, as the question indicated. Since that time, we have not picked that conversation back up with Columbus, and staff is no longer pursuing that adjustment at this point.
Thank you, Megan. And I was looking to see if I had any more for you. I think you are free for now. Thank you. Let's see. Let's have Paul come back, please. Interested in finding out when the sidewalk repairs will begin. Specifically, Wyandotte Woods is on the schedule for this summer.
Yeah, and as I said, my project update, we will bid that project, our annual sidewalk maintenance program this year in May and June, and get the city council for acceptance of those bids in June, and then most likely start possibly in June, most likely in July, and finish that work in September of this year.
Thank you. And I saw Dana pop up. Did you have something to add to one of our questions, Dana? Okay. I have another one for Paul. This is regarding illegal U-turns on Emerald Parkway at Wyandotte Woods Boulevard. which continue to be a daily event, but this city refuses to install a no U-turn sign, and there is no enforcement of this law. How do we stop these dangerous maneuvers before someone gets hurt?
Well, that's somewhat of a trick question, because in Dublin, U-turns are permissible unless signed as not being permissible. And the reason for that is back many years ago in the 90s when Emerald Parkway was first built and the median was established on Emerald Parkway and access was somewhat restricted, we wanted to encourage U-turns at the median breaks to allow for access to adjoining properties. So as long as motorists are making a U-turn safely and using their indicator, making sure that the area is clear, they are fully permitted to make that U-turn unless it is signed as restricted. And we really don't have many locations in Dublin that you can't make U-turns. So, and hopefully, I'm hopeful that my friends in police will back me up on that. So.
Well, thank you for that. And stick around for one more. There is a thread on Nextdoor about the use of bike lanes on Muirfield Drive. I know they are intended for bikes only, not walkers or runners. Or in the case that started the thread, a mom pushing a baby. Could you just kind of point that out and elaborate on that, and what lane should the direction of the cars be going?
We get that question quite often regarding the bike lanes on Muirfield Drive. And because there is no other adjacent pedestrian facility to the bike lanes, it is permissible for pedestrians, whether it be folks with walking, jogging, baby strollers, to use the bike lanes and coexist with bicycles themselves. We do ask that you go in the direction of travel, same as the vehicles themselves. And then just be courtesy or exercise, courtesy and patience with other users. The bike lanes are 6 feet wide, so there should be plenty of room for folks to pass each other. So if you are a jogger, a walker, stay to the right so that the bicyclist can pass on your left, and really work to share those bike lanes. Now, if we did have adjacent pedestrian facilities, such as a shared use path or a sidewalk, then we would expect the pedestrians and those users to be on that separate path system. But for all practical purposes along Muirfield Drive, that does not exist where the bike lanes do.
Thanks, Paul. And just to reiterate, we are still going through the questions that were submitted before the meeting. If you have a new question, feel free to raise your hand by clicking the hand raise function in the bottom right-hand corner. So our next question is regarding beautification funds. So I'm going to bring in Jenny Rausch, our Director of Planning, and see, Jenny, will there be any beautification funds available this year? And if so, when would recipients be announced?
Good evening. Thank you, Lindsay, for that question. We are currently in the middle of our Beautify Your Neighborhood grant cycle. Those are submitted typically, required to be submitted by the end of January to be reviewed and then awarded in the early springtime. And this round of requests are currently scheduled to go to the Community Development Committee and then on to Council here at the April and May meetings. And for all those that aren't aware of what the Beautify Your Neighborhood grant is, it's an opportunity for neighborhood HOA and civic associations to receive matching funds to make improvements to their entryways and common space areas. And that is administered by the Planning Department in conjunction with Parks and Recreation and Engineering to make sure that those meet all the requirements and then forwarded to Council for them to review. So as I mentioned, we're already in our current cycle. If people are interested in applying for next year's cycle, we typically review those and request that they meet with staff members prior to the end of the year so that those can be submitted and teed up then for next year's round of funding. So if anybody or any neighborhoods have any specific questions, they can reach out to me and I can help direct you to the right staff person to help you get started with that.
Thank you, Jenny, and thanks for elaborating on that great program. But don't go anywhere. I have another question for you. Can we please get an update on what is allowed to be installed, built, placed in an individual's home, no build zone? we recall from about 15 years ago, play sets are allowed. What about permanent fire pits, outdoor living spaces with permanent grills, TVs, etc.? Are they allowed? And if so, do they require permits from the city?
Great, another great question, which really ties in nicely to Megan's presentation and discussion, leading into code requirements and deed restrictions and knowing everybody wants to get outside and make improvements to their property. So again, it really will depend on your particular requirements, but different subdivisions have requirements mostly to the rear of their lot that sometimes are outlined as a no build zone. And then alternatively, there's also a no disturb zone. And the zoning code provides us with some guidance for what can and cannot be located in there. For a no build zone, putting buildings, sheds, patios, decks, accessory structures such as permanent fire pits or outdoor living spaces, those are not permitted to be within the no build zone. Again, the goal of that is to preserve those rear views and open view sheds for all the neighborhoods and neighboring properties. And that's fairly consistent throughout the city that we have those types of designated areas. So again, your planned district, if you're in one, or your specific zoning district might have additional requirements. And so also keeping in line with Megan's message is if you have questions about that in particular, definitely reach out to the planning staff so that we can help advise you on that. But categorically, the short answer to that is no, those will not be permitted in your no build.
Thank you, Jenny. And someone let me know my microphone level was lower than the other speakers, so I hope that's better. If not, let me know again. And now I have two questions for Lieutenant Latanzi. Number one being, how can we as citizens of a wonderful community support all of our police staff? Lieutenant.
Thank you for the question. Again, we are very grateful of any support that the community may offer, and we are very fortunate here in the city of Dublin both to have very tremendous leadership at city council and with the city manager that provide us with support, as well as the community. What I can say is that I think the most important gesture somebody could do to show their support is if they see an officer and they want to support those officers, just a simple thank you. As simple as that may sound, it goes a tremendously long way with the officers if you see them out in public, just to express your thanks for what they do. And I think that is plenty enough support from the community for them to be grateful to work in this community and provide the level of service that they do.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And sorry if you already addressed this, but will there be meet and greet opportunities with police staff in our community subdivisions?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I did not address that specifically in the presentation, but in years past, we have always responded to those HOAs that have had meetings and requested an officer and or the command staff. So I would encourage you, if you are having meetings or events within your neighborhood, whether that be virtually or in person, and you would like an officer or one of the members of our command staff to attend that meeting and give an update on the police department and or answer any questions that residents may have, please reach out to us either through the website and request an officer, or reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to either attend myself or bring one of our district officers who regularly patrols that neighborhood out to have interaction with the residents and help answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to let everyone know we have about 2 more questions that were submitted prior, and then we'll be getting to the ones that are coming in through the WebEx. So my next question is for Matt. Is the city still planning to install tennis courts at Emerald Fields Park? Any chance we could add a basketball court, half court, or even just a hoop?
You know, we had that on the capital improvement program a few years ago. And unfortunately, when we went to get pricing to install tennis courts and a basketball court, the pricing at the time was so cost prohibitive. It was almost double the typical cost or the estimated cost. So we put that project on hold. It's something that we can bring back to the table. We are very limited on space out there from, you know, a standpoint of typically your courts will want to run north and south. So the area to which we would be able to do that is pretty limited. It's not impossible, but we'll certainly take another look at that.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. And now I think I'm going to ask Dana this question. This comes from the Bishop's Crossing, Bishop's Run neighborhood. Our biggest concern is that our neighborhood was handed over almost a mile of split rail fencing that will need replaced in its entirety in the next 5 years and would completely wipe out any reserves our community has built up over 15 years and would prevent us from keeping up and improving our neighborhood. We are looking for help from the city to handle the replacement costs of this fencing if possible. Thank you.
Well, that's not a softball question. That's a fastball question. So I don't know how well I can answer that, but I guess I would just start by saying that, yeah, those kind of maintenance responsibilities are the HOAs. But I would just say that, you know, maybe a step might be that the representatives, leadership of that HOA, come meet with us at staff. Let's review the requirements and have a dialogue about that. As Jenny mentioned earlier, the Beautifier neighborhood grants can be a way to maybe soften the impact of that. Also, there might be some methods by which you could handle that maintenance over time and not try to do that all at once, and do some planning like we do to do things sort of incrementally. So happy to have that conversation. We probably ought to dig into a little bit more of the details of the requirements. Kind of hard to answer without that sort of thing right in front of me. Not trying to skirt the question whatsoever. I'd prefer that we get together and try to peel that back in person and get more of the details. But happy to try to help you find a solution or try to work through it. But generally speaking, those requirements, maintenance requirements remain with the HOA. Thank you.
Well, Dana, don't go anywhere. I have another fastball for you. I just ask the questions as they come in, you know. So this one is regarding the DORA map. The DORA map being shown this evening shows the initial DORA to include portions of South Riverview Street, the residential properties there, and out onto the Sciota River. Really? Please explain how the map is misinterpreted, inaccurate, or otherwise how public alcohol consumption on and around a family residential street is anything but abuse.
Well, I think there's a misunderstanding of the map. In fact, when Lieutenant Latanzi put that map up, I kind of balked at it myself at first. But what Lieutenant Latanzi was talking about, the heading on the slide talked about DORA, but the focus of his conversation there was about their new district. So the map that he showed was really about the new district and the allocation of officers to the new district. That is not a map representing the DORA boundaries. The DORA boundaries are as restricted as council spoke about and will approve or review and likely approve Monday night, which again, the DORA boundaries generally are this. On the east side of the river, it's restricted to Longshore Avenue, Longshore Street, there it is. Those are, thank you whoever put that up, those are the actual DORA boundaries, which is consistent with everything we've been talking about. There's no DORA on residential streets, except at Bridge Park where you have we have some of the residential in the upper stories of Bridge Park. So the map that again that Lieutenant Latanzi was showing earlier shaded in the river and some of those residential areas because that is a new policing district that he was trying to refer to. Greg, is that correct, or did I misrepresent that?
No, thanks, Dana. Yes, you are absolutely correct. That map shows the overview of the district that we would assign an officer to. They would specifically be responsible for that area, and then within that district are the boundaries for the DORA. So my apologies if there was a a misunderstanding on that. So no, you're absolutely correct, sir.
Thank you.
And I hope that answers your question, Steve. I believe I see one hand raised, so I am going to see if Bruce could unmute Brian Griffith. And Brian, if you are there, we would love to hear your question.
Hang on one second, Lindsay.
Oh, okay. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a question that came in through the Q&A function. You're more than welcome to use that as well. You mentioned a new housing sub proposed. Are we asking developers to submit school district impact statement, number of students, and costs to the school district for this and future housing developments? I believe Megan could speak to that. Megan, if you are there.
I actually saw Dana turn on his camera. Dana, do you want to take that?
That's fine. I'll be happy to take that. No, we are not asking for those. The particular housing development that I referred to is the Gordon property. What's being proposed there is very consistent with the community plan that has been in effect for quite a few years. It's not a deviation from that, and would not venture any more impact than what was already planned or expected as part of that community plan. So I would also remind everyone too that when you think about the development of residential development within the city of Dublin, one thing I'd like to remind people about is that as the city was master planned, it continues to be about 60% of our geographic area is designated for residential development and about 40% for commercial. The city's done a great job of sticking to that. And really where we're at for the most part right now is a lot of infill development, which is consistent with the city's community plan that has been in place for quite some time. And that's within the city's corporate boundaries. And keep in mind too, that the school district boundaries, namely Dublin City School District, go well beyond the city corporate boundaries. And remember too, we are also in the Hilliard School District boundaries, and we are in the Jonathan Alder School District boundaries. The other thing I would add is that we don't have a lot of development opportunity for housing in Dublin left, except in the southwest area of the city. And there is opportunity for more housing development there. We have a great relationship with both Hilliard City School, with all school districts, Hilliard, Jonathan Alder, and Dublin City School District. We keep in touch with them about these developments and impacts. As we look at redevelopment, where we might be looking at higher density housing relative to multifamily, I think that we've been able to demonstrate that some of the multifamily development that we've had in Dublin is having minimal impact on the school system relative to a net new kids attending Dublin City Schools. I'm happy to sit down and talk about that in more detail with anyone if you'd like more information about that or to have a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dana. And now I think we'll try Brian Griffith once again. Brian, are you there?
Oh, now you can hear me, Lindsay.
Oh, so glad to hear someone ask a question other than myself. Thank you.
I'll be real quick, but I'm going to dispute Paul's statement about Dublin law, and that I'm not sure that he has read the Dublin U-turn ordinance lately. That both Dublin Ordinance 72.014 and Ohio Revised Code 4511.37 prohibit a U-turn where you are on a curve or cannot be easily seen from 500 feet away. And that intersection of Emerald Parkway and Wyandotte Woods Boulevard is certainly both of those things. And the conversation that I've had with multiple Dublin police officers is that that is an illegal U-turn. But Paul, my conversation with your office was that they didn't want to put up any more signs because of sign fatigue. That despite that being illegal, they just don't want to remind people that it's illegal there, in hopes that they'll do that elsewhere, follow signs that are posted elsewhere. So I do think that that's a concern, and would like that to be addressed. If you want to make U-turns illegal everywhere, then you can change the law. That's up to the city council, I guess, if that's what you want to propose. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you. And Paul, I don't know if you wanted to address that anymore or.
Yeah, I haven't necessarily reviewed section 72.04 lately, but we certainly can revisit it. But you're correct. I think the prohibition is on a roadway with grade or where you can't be visible within 500 feet. So we would take a look at that site distance at this location and evaluate the accident history to really see if a no U-turn sign is necessary. It's one thing just not to like it, but the other is it really needed in terms of safety? That's really our standard for evaluating it. I'm not sure who told you that we worry about sign fatigue. What the actual concern is, we just don't like to put up signs in locations where they're really not necessary, or there really is no benefit in having the sign itself. We really want to put up signage where there's a true purpose for that signage and a safety concern to address, to really necessitate that signage. But we will certainly take a look at this location.
Thank you, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And I see another hand raised. So Tracy Berquin, Bruce, if you can go ahead and get Tracy going. Tracy, you're up.
Hi, just because you were talking about signs and driving, I've always wondered, in front of Jerome High School, if you're coming from south or north, or if you're heading east, it's 45 on all those other roads. And then once you kind of drive a little bit past Jerome, there's a sign for 35. And there's often a police officer who sits right there. But there's no sign when you come out of the roundabout going towards like downtown Dublin that says it's 35 until you're kind of upon the police officer. And so I'm wondering, either is the speed limit 45, 35, and if it's not 45, if they might put a sign there, because to me it doesn't seem intuitive if you're coming from the other directions that you would have any way to know that the speed limit's changed.
Thank you, Tracy. And Paul, I'm going to see if you can address that one again.
Well, I heard two locations. I heard Dublin Jerome High School and then historic Dublin. And so I'm not sure where the concern is, if it's actually at Dublin Jerome or in historic Dublin itself.
So if let's say I'm coming from Glacier Ridge Metro Park and I'm driving south, I see Jerome High School, I get to the roundabout, and I, in essence, end up turning left. So you take the third exit. So I'm heading now on what will be Brand Road. I don't think it's called that at that point. So the high school is now on my left-hand side.
That is Brand Road. That is Brand Road.
Yeah. So the direction I came from was 45. And also, if I'm heading up from where Jackman Farms is, it's 45. And also, if I'm coming from like DeWitt, it's 45. Eventually, it turns to 35 on Brand Road, but it doesn't turn to 35, or the sign's at least not posted, until you're past the high school. And so I always wondered, is it still 45 there, or is it 35 in front of the high school? Because it's not posted in all the directions you're coming from. It was 45.
Right.
There's a police officer all the time. So I'm always wondering, how fast am I allowed to go?
Right. Well, the speed limit would be what the prima facie speed limit is for that character of roadway until a speed limit sign indicates that speed is different, which I know is a very confusing answer. But generally speaking, I think the answer to your question is it would be 45 unless the school zone is active at that property with Dublin Jerome, and then it would be 20 miles per hour during those restricted hours. And as you travel further east, there is a speed limit sign, I believe, that says then now it is 35 miles per hour. But we can take a look at that and work to make sure that where that transition happens, or what that speed limit is supposed to be in that section of Brand Road, that it's signed accordingly.
Okay.
To avoid that confusion.
All right, thank you both for that. I see no more hands raised at this time, but I do have a couple more questions in the Q&A. I think I'll bring up Dana for the question of what is status of fiber internet to the home in Dublin? Dana.
Well, great question. And that is a high priority of City Council as one of their primary goals, strategic goals. In fact, just yesterday, I signed a contract with a consultant to do a study for us on fiber to the home, what that might entail relative to cost and so forth. So we're in the initial assessment phase of that, really trying to understand what the cost of that might be. So we're doing that, hoping to get back to council in the August timeframe to pick up that conversation once we get some information back from that initial study. But we're moving forward towards an understanding of that from doing our own study of that. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to have that information for ourselves and that analysis. But also I want to emphasize that we continue a dialogue with the telecommunications industry and the various service providers here in Dublin, who, by the way, we greatly appreciate and have done a great job through COVID for the most part of trying to keep up with all the demand. We want to keep engaging with them as partners in this to see how we can leverage this, what they currently provide, leverage their capital investment, any potential capital investment, anything the city might need to do on its own to help affect trying to get fiber to the home. So we're moving forward. I think we're moving forward pretty quickly to try to get back to council and further their goal and understanding.
Thank you, Dana. And I have a question for Lieutenant Latanzi regarding the DORA boundaries and how will they be enforced and who is paying for the enforcement. It seems that the alcohol vendors should bear the cost. Lieutenant.
Well, I'd first like to start with saying it is our job as a police department to enforce regulations in regards to alcohol and open containers, which would be the offense if someone had an open container outside of the DORA. While the DORA would be new if council approves that over the summer and during this pilot program, we would tend to lean to educate individuals on those boundaries to start with, rather than take strict enforcement in those areas, because it is new. We want people to enjoy their time in that area, but also to know where they can go with those open containers.
Thank you so very much. And we did receive a question, will there be outdoor concerts at Sciota Park this summer? That is actually a function of Dublin Arts Council, and I don't believe that they have made a decision on that yet. I haven't seen anything on that, and of course, the state and local health authorities are still working through a lot of those regulations for the summer. So I'm looking on their website and I haven't heard. If anyone else on the call happens to know the answer, please feel free to jump in. I just don't know that they have made that decision quite yet.
I had a discussion recently with David Young, and I know they very much want to do it. I think they're trying to figure out some of the logistics on that and being able to do that, you know, as Lindsay alluded to, with the abiding by public health requirements. Matt, Ehrman, have you had any inquiries relative to the park?
No, not yet, Dana. I'm in the same position you are, information-wise.
Okay, thanks.
So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for the question. We certainly hope to have some great summer events. At this time, I don't see any other hands raised or any other questions in the Q&A. If I missed your question, I promise it wasn't intentional. I'm just looking through and I don't see anything more. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us in the Communications and Public Information Office, and we will get your questions answered. So with that, I thank you all so very much for joining us tonight. It's been a great dialogue. Thank you so much for the questions. Thanks to City Council for being here and for Dana and all the City of Dublin staff. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a follow-up email that will have this meeting in its entirety, the recording, and a survey so you can let us know what you thought and how much you're looking forward to getting back to the in-person meetings. So thank you so very much. And if there's nothing else, have a great evening.